For our guests in the ballroom, we want you to know our program will begin soon.
Hard done by you. Some things look better, baby, just passing through. And I think it's gonna be a long, long time till touchdown brings me round again to find I'm not the man they think I am at home. Oh, no, no, no. And this is what it should have said. Touchdown brings me round again. Will I fall in the bottom? Can't be dead. No, no, no.
You're good. And here comes the voice of God. Stand by. 1 minute and 6 seconds. And go.
For our guests in attendance, welcome to the Forum 2022. Our program will begin in just a few moments. In the meantime, please draw your attention to the screens for a message from one of our platinum sponsors, Equus.
With more than 1 million job seekers served annually, Equus is fostering local, social, and economic impact in the communities we serve. Our employment and training placement rates are evidence of supporting individuals and empowering them to change their lives. Our impact translates to helping a single mother become the first college graduate in her family, inspiring an experienced worker who was just laid off to rediscover their potential, coaching a young adult to pursue their career pathway, and so much more. At Equus, our footprint spans the U.S. and Canada. Every job seeker we serve has our network of support to back them, and the expertise of our teams who know the local values of the communities we serve. Our teams are driven by leaving a legacy, meaning every action we take as individuals and as a company is motivated by leaving things better than we found them. Equus Workforce Solutions, creating opportunities, changing lives.
To begin our stage program, please welcome Jennifer Harris.
I'm honored to serve as chair of the board of directors of the National Association of Workforce Boards. Our theme this year is transforming potential into workforce power. There is incredible potential and energy in our communities, in our businesses, and in our workers. But there is also incredible potential in this room. This is such a crucial time for all of us in workforce development. I know that each of you could talk all day about the need to connect talent with meaningful and purpose-filled work. If you haven't heard it lately, let me thank you for your meaningful, purpose-filled work. You are the heart of your communities, always seeking best practices and always making connections. You are the conveners. You facilitate collaboration with educational institutions, businesses, and government officials at the local, state, and federal level. You counsel workers towards in-demand career pathways that lead them to self-sufficiency and your communities to prosperity. You partner with educators to encourage more career exploration and workforce education in our K-12 and secondary classrooms. You match veterans, individuals with disabilities, returning citizens, English language learners, and others with meaningful work opportunities. You work with employers to forge more earn and learn opportunities so workers can grow job skills while businesses grow the talent they need. You advocate for national policy and funding and regulation that allows your work to be more impactful in meeting local needs. You collaborate with employer partners on what inclusion and diversity really looks like and how it can truly benefit workplace culture and customer experience. We are thrilled to be spending the next 3 days with you. The goal of the forum is to provide you with the opportunity to learn from and network with your peers and showcase the great work that is happening all across the country. We also want you to be safe, so wash your damn hands, everybody. We have masks and encourage you to just do you. Respect the dots. Before you go in for that hug or handshake, take note of the dots and respect one another's comfort level with physical interaction. I want to take this opportunity to recognize the unsung heroes who unselfishly give of their time and talents throughout the year as our volunteer NAWB board members. Could we have all the NAWB board members please stand? I just want to personally say that it's an honor to work with each and every one of you. I'd also like to take a moment to thank our sponsors. The forum isn't possible without the support of each of you. Our platinum level sponsors, Equus Workforce Solutions, Geographic Solutions, Monster Government Solutions, and Walmart. Our gold sponsors are Engine and Grant Associates. Our silver sponsors, Equifax, ICF, JFF, KRA, New Profit, Public Consulting Group, Road Trip Nation, Thomas P. Miller and Associates, Kale, Easy Virtual Fair, Eckerd Connects, EMSI Burning Glass, Inside Track, JobWorks, Pat Davis Design Group, Purpose, Strata Education, and Workforce 180. And our supporter sponsors, AGS Data System, EconoView, Future Workforce Systems, and International Accreditors Continuing Education Training. And a special thank you to the Riverside County Workforce Development Board that continues to provide additional support to NAWB year after year. Personally, yes, let's give a round of applause. Thank you. Personally, I'd like to express my gratitude to my local board, the Lake County Workforce Development Board, our Executive Director, Jennifer Serino, Antonio Garcia, Laura Gergley, and Felicia Nixon. Thank you for your inspiration, your friendship, and support. I'd also like to thank the staff of NAWB. Planning the forum is always a huge lift, but the added pressures of the last 2 years have really been a test. But they have all demonstrated an amazing level of energy, compassion, and resilience, ensuring that we provide you with an amazing experience. So thank you to the staff of NAWB. Over the last 6 months, the NAWB Board of Directors has been working to create a strategic plan to bring NAWB into the future. I was inspired by the passion from our board to commit to a vision to achieve financial stability, increased awareness, maximize our national influence, and improve our operational capacity. Also, thank you to the members that contributed to this process by participating in a survey earlier this year. Please enjoy the next 3 days of world-class professional development. I'm so glad to be learning alongside each and every one of you, and thank you so much and enjoy the afternoon.
And now, to present the W.O. Lawton Award, please welcome to the stage Jaime Cruz.
Good afternoon, how's everybody? Isn't it great to see a room full of people, hug your friends? By the way, if you look at my chart, I have a green dot, which means I'm open for hugs, so come and find me. I'm really excited because I came all the way from Las Vegas to present this award. Where's the Las Vegas posse? If you guys, yes, if you're by the National Mall and see a group of local elected officials and board members riding scooters, you know who they are, those crazy guys over there. So I'm here to present the W.O. Lawton Award. This award is given to an organization that commits time, energy, and money to leading efforts which serve its community and develop its region's workforce. This year's winner of the W.O. Lawton Award is Grant Quesada, who created the John Hancock Barbershop with a vision to create a work environment to benefit veterans and provide a unique experience for his community. In collaboration with the Yavapai County Workforce Development Board in Prescott, Arizona, Grant and the John Hancock Barbershop have conceived and administered exemplary training and placement and created career and economic opportunity for young people in the region. John Hancock Barbershop and its workforce efforts have also formed the foundation of the Founding Fathers Collective, a partnership of 5 local businesses and 1 space, which has become a community hub in downtown Prescott. So please join me to congratulate Grant. Where are you? Please join us up here so we can present this award. Round of applause, please.
Well, hey, how's everybody going out there? Awesome. So we got invited out to this thing, and my business partner Jesse and I, and Jace, who's the other young man up here, usually have our nose down to the plow and had no idea what this was. We just knew it was a trip to D.C., and it sounds like a good time. So thank you very much. But after I got out of the military in 2014, 8 years active duty, and Jesse, thanks. So I spent time in the Army, and Jesse was over in the Air Force, and we both grew up in Prescott. Our wives are from Prescott. Moved back to raise my kids there, and really focused on opening the barber shop, which with a 1-chair shop, and after about, I don't know, a year and a half, grew it to 2 locations and 8 chairs. had about a team of 12 and started really partnering with NACOG and everything that they really help support businesses in our local community. So they've been a priceless benefit to us in our region. And Terry and Anita have been fantastic with just partnering with us, really being force multipliers in the workspace in Prescott and throughout Yavapai County. And through their partnership, Jesse and I ended up becoming business partners. We opened Founding Fathers Collective, which is really a group of 6 businesses that we own, so a coffee shop, a bar, speakeasy, cigar lounge, and now it's just a bunch of nonsensical stuff 5th grade boys dream about, and we ended up making it come to fruition. But that being said, our core values as a business has been very much focused on community connection and care, and how do we, as business owners and veterans, really invest into our community and give back. And so we opened in the middle of COVID. I think it was October 2020. We employ about 65 individuals. I think our retention rate sits at about 92% throughout the area. We've never really shut the doors on anything throughout the entire last 6 or 7 years, and through really just the focus in our community. And as business entrepreneurs, NACOG's been there the entire time to help support and provide just the ability for us to continue to grow and expand. And so really today's about you guys, so thank you so much for just making it all happen. I'm going back to a nice tasty cup of coffee, so thank you.
Please welcome back to the stage Jennifer Harris.
Well, we've got an amazing panel set to begin in just a few minutes here. And just to kind of tee it up, you know, the last few years have brought unexpected challenges. A labor market facing unprecedented unemployment early in the pandemic, only to recover more quickly than anyone imagined. With that brought additional challenges as employers faced labor shortages, supply chain demands, and now inflation and international uncertainty. How does the workforce system work with industry, education, and policy to strengthen the system with an additional focus on equity and inclusion? Oh yeah, and then there's WIOA authorization on top of all of this. So we brought in some experts to help us figure this all out. Please welcome them to the stage.
Please welcome today's panelists, John Galway, Dr. Angelo Farouk, Sergio Galliano, and Stephen Partridge.
Thank you so much. All right, well, thank you all so much for being here. I think the best place to start is for you just all to tell us a little bit about your organizations and your responsibilities in your current role.
Sure, fantastic. So Snap-on Tools, we're a U.S. manufacturer. We actually are a global business. We manufacture throughout the world, but in the United States, there are 3,400 van distributors, franchisees. We sell about 80% of what we make right here in the United States. I am part of the industrial division, so I'm Vice President of North America for Snap-on Industrial, and we work in collaboration with all the critical industries, so power generation, natural resources, manufacturing, as well as aerospace, as space exploration, and our education community, because we feel that is a critical need.
Great.
Hi, I'm Angelo Farouk. It's an honor for me to serve on behalf of Governor Gavin Newsom as the chairman of the California Workforce Development Board. So our board is responsible for governing all federal workforce money that comes to California and developing a common policy framework for the overall $6 billion system. In a typical year, we serve about 1.5 million people, and we have over 200 America Job Centers throughout the state. And I'm also proud to serve on the Riverside County Workforce Development Board also.
Brought his own cheering section. That's awesome.
Hi, everyone. So good to be here. My name is Sergio Galliano. I'm an economic policy advisor with Third Way. Third Way is a moderate democratic think tank based here in D.C. That's pure D.C. jargon. What we really are is an organization about impact, especially in the policy space in our 4 programs. And we do that through action. Sometimes that's writing short, concise pieces to inform and persuade the public, especially members of Congress. At other times, that's working directly with them, senators and representatives, on specific legislation, improving past legislation, or just informing them about an issue they're not too sure about. When it comes to workforce development in our economic space, we focus a lot on the 2/3 of Americans that don't have a college degree and probably don't need one. So we think about three things: how to increase opportunity for them through earn and learn models, apprenticeships, and credentials. Two, how to make the system more affordable for them, like through supportive services and wraparound services. And throughout all, we focus on high quality jobs that give people stability for enhancing economic mobility and generally leaving fulfilling lives. Thank you for having me.
Great. Stephen.
Good afternoon, everyone. Steve Partridge. I'm with Northern Virginia Community College. Don't hold that against me. I spent many years working at the local workforce board at Charlotte Works in Charlotte, North Carolina, and also on the state board at the state of Arizona.
Excellent. Well, thank you all again for being here. We have a lot of things to cover. So one of the first things I want to ask, and maybe we just kind of go down the row, is with the nation's experiences over the last 2 years, how did that accelerate change in your particular area of expertise? So John, in business and in manufacturing.
I don't think we have enough time to go through that whole topic. But when you look at the pandemic and you look at where we're at, I think one of the key things for us is bringing to light the importance of manufacturing within the United States, bringing manufacturing back onshore. But with that came many different challenges. So when you talk about what do we see that has changed, it's actually an increased emphasis on the skills gap. It's becoming more and more prevalent now today than it ever was before. So I know we've talked about that, and that's been something everybody's communicating. But as you start to look at manufacturing within the United States, most of the largest manufacturers are supported by a broad foundation of small manufacturers. And they're witnessing firsthand that skills gap. So as we continue to expand, I think during the pandemic, it brought a lot of importance around U.S. manufacturing, and we saw firsthand the challenges that we see with the global supply chain. Fortunately at Snap-on, we were able to navigate through that because we have so much presence in the United States with manufacturing, more vertically integrated. But however, working with a lot of our customers, our key customers, we see that complexity during the pandemic really kind of came through. And as they try to build that infrastructure, now they're facing how do they find the people to do that? It's one thing to build a building, it's one thing to bring a factory, it's another thing to have the folks who can actually build your products.
Yeah. I think offshoring was really popular. It was cheaper. The labor was in other countries, and then all of a sudden we saw kind of the blowback, right, of how that affected American businesses when those supply chains were cut off.
I think on top of that too is the speed of market, right? So the experience of the consumer today is much different than it was 5 years ago, right? So that instant gratification is putting increased pressure on manufacturers to respond accordingly, as well as products becoming more complex, more integrated with technology. Enhances that one step further.
Yeah, and Angelo, you come at this from a couple of different vantage points, right? Like you said, private business, workforce. What changes have you seen, obviously, in those different areas for you?
Well, I think a lot of it has been very uneven, right? Whether it's regionally, different areas have been disproportionately impacted, or different sectors. And so it's important that we have to be very surgical about how we respond and empower people. But I think also with respect to youth have been hit very hard, and for them, not having that foundation of experience to draw from, and lack of internship opportunities, especially if you're talking about getting physically involved in the workspace and having those skill sets developed, I think that creates a lot of different challenges that not just show up in data like unemployment, but it affects into the social emotional well-being, and that has, and statistics shows and research that if you're youth, and in our workforce system, we categorize youth as 16 to 24. If you lose your job, you're much more likely to have a spiraling downward effect in terms of being able to recover and have those opportunities. But even though a tight labor market, I think, also creates opportunities for more wage increase, but with the downward effects of inflation, people might not psychologically and in a practical, literal way be feeling the effects of those upsides that would be more typical in a tight labor market.
There's certainly a lot of headwinds coming at us, right, from all different directions. Sergio, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, from the DC perspective, we look at the trends in the economy, how it affects low and moderate income Americans, and we see in what new trends have come up, but also what's been exacerbated. So three things come to mind. One is the erosion of low-income jobs. Part of that is from automation. Another part is from economic changes. And automation is this kind of fancy buzzword, and it's usually relegated to like the labs and factories we never hear of or see. but we're starting to see it a lot more in our daily lives. Whether at the movie theater or at a restaurant where we see a cashier replace someone, that's innovation, that's modernization, it looks great, but collectively we have a responsibility to see that and know that that tablet is replacing 1 to 5 people, or a plumber, or a welder, or a lawyer even, low to high skill jobs. So we have to address that because it is going to be a growing slice of the spectrum of problems the workforce policy system interacts with. More is we need more opportunities in that Goldilocks zone where you need more than high school but less than college. We have to provide more post-secondary skills. So we care a lot about pushing earn and learn models that can work and scaling them up. And I would say a third is, it's obvious to this room, I think, because you are on the front line of workforce development and the grant funding and whatnot, but equity, it's a renewed discussion in DC, and that's very important. It's something that the pandemic exacerbated, and I'm not saying that will translate into tangible legislation this year or next, but it makes a big difference in that it's part of the discussion. For example, the latest WIOA draft from the House and Ed and Labor Committee 2 weeks ago includes bold measures to increase equity. It's both a reflection of the Democratic Party, but I think it's a reflection of the realization policymakers see this is a big deal. Whether you look at it through a moral or social lens, or looking at it as a systemic social scientist realizing there are parts of the workforce that are not being addressed. And those issues are really pervaded, being seen on the Hill, and how lawmakers talk about legislation.
That's great, and we'll probably come back to that issue too. But Stephen, how about community college? What are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, I mean, the last 2 years, as you all know, if there's parents in the room, we went online. And all of a sudden, a lot of our most in-demand classes, those ones that required hands-on, just stopped because we didn't have the technology in place to really do automotive or welding remotely. We also are looking at the data to see, did people actually do as well remote as they were in person? So we're looking at that data now, but I think the biggest takeaway from the pandemic is 1 million students disappeared from higher ed. 1 million students just disappeared. Now, some of that might be that they were lured into the workforce. Others might be that if parents out there were paying a high tuition check to a university or college, all of a sudden realized, wait, I'm paying the same amount and they're in my basement? So why is that the case? So there was no break-in cost for a lot of families, and they made some opportunity cost changes that said, hey, is this worth the investment? And it's been coming for a long time. Higher ed has assumed parents are always going to pay, or individuals are always going to borrow money to go to get a degree, and they're not really sure if that's really worth it anymore. And I think that disconnect has been exacerbated by the pandemic, and I think we're going to have to earn people back to higher ed to say, listen, we have a pathway that's going to lead to a job. And if we don't have that there, I think we're going to struggle to really fill those seats.
And going back to something that John had said about technology, how do we feel about, I mean, there was for a long time we heard about, technology was going to take away all these jobs, right? And the American worker, what were we going to do? And now we see automation can be a benefit for maybe some of these frontline jobs that maybe some people no longer seem attractive. So how does that fit into all of your worlds in terms of the changes in technology or automation or AI?
Yeah, I'll just kind of take that first. I think we have to be somewhat cautious a little bit when we use the word automation, is to assume that it just completely runs itself, right? These are still segments of the industry that require repair, maintenance, structure, infrastructure. You think about electricians, you think about some of the trades you mentioned. These are all relevant within the manufacturing. Even if it is automated, there's still folks that are doing the planning cycle, they're still doing the repair, maintenance of the equipment. As automation comes in, it also requires increased calibration and maintenance and assistance and overhaul. It doesn't run by itself, without any kind of human interaction. So we're seeing that. I think the education piece is one that we've seen, is the desire of students to be able to, how do we get that hybrid learning style together to be able to still train the tactical skill sets that they need, in addition to being able to still get the theory captured. But I think from an automation standpoint, we actually see this as a positive as we move forward. This is going to actually be an exciting piece for a new generation to come in and have the opportunity to use their desires and skill sets to kind of define how we're going to move forward.
One thing I would just add to that too is I think there's sometimes a misnomer when people think of automation and the effects that it has on workers, to think that entire occupations are going to be wiped out. And in some instances that is the case, but a lot of it is based on specific tasks that are being automated within an occupation, as opposed to the entire job being wiped out. And so there is a component of this where we need to embrace the productivity and the quality of the worker experience that can be associated with this. And also, with respect to workforce development training, the service delivery, the role technology can play in being more responsive and more accessible to people. So I think there's a lot of different aspects of this that should be considered.
I'm always excited by this question because it's so difficult to comprehend what to do next. It's very complex. From the federal government's point of view, addressing automation is nearly impossible because it affects low-income folks, high-income folks as well. And it's difficult. You have to decide if you want to help out, for example, the advanced manufacturing sector. You have that a lot during the pandemic. You have it during the supply chain issues. We realize the inefficiencies or the needs of logistics, more truck drivers, for example. But when it comes to other jobs, they're chipping away in sometimes subtle and not so subtle ways. So to address that, you're going to see probably over the next decade more standalone legislation that addresses specific occupations or an effort by policymakers across federal agencies to be more holistic in their approach to workforce, to bring in more of the social safety net, to bring in more unemployment, to really get the AJCs, the American Job Centers, more condensed in the program and funding, because you have to look at the demand side of the economy. What do we need in terms of technology? But on the supply side, what are the workers needed? Why don't they have foundational skills? Why are they so easy to replace? Why are they having a tough time? So it'll be a combination of looking more on the supply of workers, but also being able to see which industries need specific help at this moment.
Yeah, we learned a lot. As I said, that the technology is key, I think, for a lot of the jobs. The delivery of that technology, though, there's an equity issue at play. A lot of our students, we realized, did not have the bandwidth at home to deliver the high-speed internet that needed to do a Zoom class. We've investigated new technologies right now that you can have virtual cadavers floating in front of you, but you have to have that bandwidth again and the home equipment to actually use that technology. So I think if we're really going to look at the long-term play of getting education into people's homes, because people are asking for it, even though we're back in person, a lot of our students are saying, I don't want to deal with Northern Virginia traffic, so can I just go online on Thursdays because I don't have enough time between my job and class time to actually take care of my kids. So if we're going to have this hybrid model that allows that technology to be something delivered at home, we've got to invest in this technology. And the feds and the states have to realize this is not cheap training. When I was a workforce director, you'd go to the community college and say, I have $3,000 as my top ITA amount. And it's like, you have to do this training for this high demand job that's going to pay a living wage. Now that I know what it actually costs, I'm just like, wow, that is crazy. Because I've done training for Amazon Web Services, and it's about $12,000 for 8 weeks, and it gets them a $60,000 job, but $12,000 a person. Most workforce boards can't afford that, to do that level of training. So we've got to be realistic about what high demand training costs.
So what is workforces? What are the board's role in that conversation? How would you suggest that they tackle those questions or look at that funding differently?
Well, I think it's an education process. I think people need to realize what education costs. We've all bought into society that a degree is the gold standard, and we kind of steer a lot of our kids into a degree pathway, and we don't really think much when a college says it's $30,000 a year to go here. But then you have a workforce board that says we got to get someone into a high demand training, and we say, how much is the feds funding this? We know we've been underfunding it since I was involved in the early 2000s. I think we need to get more legislators out and understand what training costs. I think we need to work with staff to really understand that this high-tech training is not cheap. My faculty for an IT program, as I run the non-credit side of the college, I can pay whatever I want, because I don't have to compete with the credit side. So I hire people from industry to come in, and if they want to work for me full time, I've got to pay $140,000 a year as an instructor for non-credit training in IT, and that's on the low end. So I think we've got to do a lot of education to legislators and federal folks to what it costs to do this.
Yeah, Sergio, do you want to take that in terms of talking about that, what that looks like?
Absolutely. We're at a critical time right now. The pandemic has been so tragic for the workforce in terms of the economic crisis, but this is also a great time. WIOA 2014, it's been stuck there for all these years, and it was supposed to be passed last year, and that's the federal government's main way of responding to the workforce. It got back down last year. Unfortunately, it didn't make the top of the priority. I think it should have been, of course, but it has a great chance right now, partly because of the action that we've seen. 2 weeks ago, the latest draft of WIOA came out. It's largely a Democratic bill that I hinted at before, but it makes great strides in pushing equity, in pushing grants for reentry programs for justice involved individuals, in pushing grants for community colleges, for example, to codify those grants, that community colleges play a great role in workforce development. It also has dedicated funding for sector partnerships, expanded supportive services that include mental health, And it has a way bolder definition of equity, not only in the definition of who counts and who's been historically marginalized, but also looking at states and their capacity and responsibility to report that. So already you can already imagine the rift in DC about how the federal government will respond to this. Left, right, the funding, there will be constant debates. But where we are now is, next up, it's going to be introduced in the House. It's going to go to a House vote. The Senate has not said much yet. But there's going to be some competition there and some need to compromise. That is always the case, and previous experience with 2014 and WEA in '98 taught us the same. But because of midterm elections this year, we may not see WEOA get reauthorized, maybe not this summer or spring, but you'll see action in the news. But I'm hopeful we can get to that by end of year. And that has advantages, because now people, like in my position, are responding to what's going on, and we're giving amendments and recommendations to policymakers, and they have time to include that. And I think the biggest rift will be on funding, it'll be on equity, and it'll be on the role of expanded funding for sector partnerships. These are the issues that maybe you may not think are the most important at the national level, but they tend to be right now in DC, which is why I think these conferences are so important to bridge that gap between implementation and what policymakers think is best, which is not always right, but we can help pivot towards something better.
And Angela, you brought up youth earlier. Tell us what that looks like for California, or what are some things that your local boards are doing to address that gap?
Absolutely. So in our system, we have the state superintendent of public instruction as a member on the state workforce board, and we have the chancellor of the California community colleges also on the board. So we do look at the entire spectrum, cradle to career, in terms of the education and youth component beyond just the 16 to 24 WEOA area. But I saw our workforce system, and Riverside County is an example. We're providing technology devices when we're talking about the digital literacy and digital access equity pieces, supporting the local school districts on those bandwidth and the device areas. Those are areas where they could provide support. One thing that I think is sometimes challenging and frustrating for some people is that there's so much of a focus on helping students after they've already dropped out of school, or they're already having those challenges in terms of the WEOA system, youth opportunity centers and things of that nature, and having more flexibility of funds to focus more on the preventative side for young people. And again, with the nature of this pandemic and the crisis, I think it's even more imperative that we do that, because not just for the sake of the young people, the students, but also just from a cost efficiency, from a scalability standpoint. And so right now, those types of things require waivers in terms of with the Department of Labor in order to have those flexibility of youth funds. But I know on the state of California, we're great advocates to working with Department of Labor. Our Secretary of Labor that I came into this role as the chair, Julie Su, she's now #2 at Department of Labor. So we're very fortunate, I think, to have great working relationship with our federal government to help facilitate some of these areas, whether it's waivers or other support.
I might want to add, one thing we've done a really bad job in this country is career advice. So many people show up out of the K-12 system at Nova who don't know what they want to do. And for many of our students in financial aid, they take classes to explore, and that costs them the transfer opportunities. So they run out of financial aid maybe before they complete their degree, because they're exploring. They're trying to figure out what they want, because we've really not done a great job as a society in the US. You look at other countries, they do a much better job exposing kids to the different types of jobs that are in demand, to ones that lead to sustaining wages. But if you ask most kids in America today, ask a seventh grader, what are the top paying jobs in their community, they couldn't tell you.
They want to be influencers.
They want to be influencers, yeah. Or play poor sports.
TikTok, come on.
Yeah, exactly. So
I think
we've got to take that seriously.
And I think to your point, Stephen, that's one of the biggest things that we see as well. Not only did somebody make the investment in education, but when they received the education, they realized they didn't like it. And they didn't want to pursue that career path. And then they're trying to reskill back into a different segment. So I think reaching the youth is huge, and we work, I think that's a collaboration of both industry and education to do that. We're working in the Alabama market with an industry partner who's doing STEM in the junior high level. Mm-hmm. And part of that is the research shows that a young girl in 6th grade has already made the kind of mindset of where they're going to pursue their career path. Yep. And very few of them are thinking about STEM and engineering anymore, because that's not, as a society, the path in which we're taking. Right? I'll give you an example. We were at an event. There was a 10-year-old young lady that was there, and her mother and father were there, and we had an interactive STEM exhibit. And they pushed their 8-year-old son forward, but not the daughter. It's like, Why is that, right? So we take her by the hand, we bring her in, we get her involved, and she actually outperforms everybody who did that STEM project. So her name was at the leaderboard. She came by every 30 minutes to see if she was still there, and she beat out 18-year-old in high schools as well. So it's this type of piece, to your point, about making these opportunities aware, especially in underserved communities. Do we truly advocate that these are career paths of prosperity? These aren't just jobs. These are career paths that can change generations if we get involved. And I think that's the advocate, from the youth side. I just wanted to jump on that while you mentioned it. I think it's important.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Stephen, we had talked about the changing demographics of this country, right? Low birth rates, the boomers retiring, and how the pandemic, may have accelerated that. So, from a community college standpoint, what is the labor shortage, the skills gap? I mean, is that here to stay, in your opinion?
In the short term, yes. I mean, I think it's probably not a skills gap, it's the misalignment of the skills and what industry is asking for. And I think for a lot of colleges and a lot of universities, we still don't engage enough with industry. We all have our legal requirements that we have advisory boards, and we invite business leaders to sit on them. We get together, feed them lunch once a year, and say, what do you think of our curriculum? And they go, this is great, yeah, we need more of your students. But it doesn't break the mindset of 92% of all job postings in IT in Northern Virginia require a bachelor's degree or higher. And if we're really going to solve this problem, we need to rethink what are those entry points into these high demand fields and help industry rethink that. And I know HR sometimes is my menace because that's where a lot of these ideas go to die. The CEO says, yes, let's try something different. Let's do apprenticeship. Let's try a different pathway in. And you get to HR and it kind of, no, we need to put this on here and this on there. We've got to experiment. We've got to try different ways. Because it's not really that your K-12 numbers are falling. I mean, they're falling a little. But it's really the adult population that doesn't see an opportunity to really reskill and get into something that's a pathway to prosperity.
Yeah. Well, I mean, industry is always risk averse, right? So I think it's sometimes incumbent upon whether it's workforce or education to try to mitigate that risk as much as possible, right? And allow them the opportunity to see an alternative, because it's a huge liability, right, for them to try something. But if we can help them with either an easier way or more options, I think that's a way or a key to success for us to work with industry more efficiently, right? I should say expose them to more options.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the communication was key. Right? I think there's not a better time than today in this environment to engage industry to ask, what do you really need? Yeah. Before it was just the speed was moving so fast that, you could bring somebody in and you would train them. But now there's so many openings, such a desire to bring talent in that it's very important that industry is communicating with educators and workforce boards to clearly identify the skill set you need today. And it's actually beneficial to the workforce because you don't need to know everything. You just need these core concepts to start today. So it can be quick, fast programs that can mature over time. But the immediate need is I need somebody who can do this basic fundamental piece today.
Right. So to your point, for those of you that may know or don't know, I'm an executive recruiter, right? So I think that one of the things that I love to hear is if companies can embrace hire for talent and train for skill, right? I mean, but how do we help employers identify that, right? How do you identify talent to the point where somebody has the potential then to gain those skills, or have them invest in people to train them to train them up to those skills?
And higher ed has to be better at deconstructing the degree. So if we're going to train people for specific skills and they want to eventually go back and finish their degree, we have to make sure those credits, we have to find a way to build the prior learning credit up front. Mm-hmm. Because individuals do not want to take the same class over and over because you took it at the wrong university, it doesn't transfer. That whole transfer issue's become a big, albatross around our neck when it comes to the working adults taking us seriously as a way to work towards something.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to pivot just for the sake of time to diversity and inclusion. And Sergio, you had brought that up about marginalized communities and the pandemic exacerbating that. Can you tell us kind of more about that? And then we can certainly talk about the board's roles in that conversation and our responsibilities in that.
Absolutely. For me, this is the most important question of my work. It's what I wanted to bring to Third Way in our policy. And there's a huge domain of things that we can do for equity, some of them more direct, some of them not as direct. But I know it's been repeated ad nauseum in these communities, but I can't say it enough. It's just we need more data. We need more information. It needs to be disaggregated. The focus on states providing more information, or through workforce boards, is really important. It's not just about race. It's about looking at the levers of the workforce system and what needs to be pushed up or down and needs more help. We can only move as fast as we can as the slowest, and it's also got a cost component. Diversity is important in culture, but it also has a cost component if we don't address it. If certain people are perpetually left behind, it adds to that generational inequality, and it becomes an easier excuse to look back and say, this is not today's problem, this is yesterday's problem, and the federal government takes a long time addressing that. I would say the second thing, more directly, is we need to make it more affordable and accessible. Supportive services are really important, and that means a lot of things. That could be addressing an opportunity cost of money, the money it takes to take a course, but it's also the opportunity cost of time. Low-income Americans probably have a couple of jobs they're bringing together. The parents might have different shifts. It's not fair to assume they're all 9 to 5. They're busy. The flexibility of having an online class or having a credit through the tax code can go a long way. In the current WIOA draft, I saw something interesting, which is it adds mental health and substance abuse. This is interesting for me in terms of workforce because they're not the biggest things that I hear about in terms of supportive services, but I think it's very modern and a very culturally genuine thing to acknowledge. They're not just an input and an output. They have feelings, they have needs. Some of them come from other countries, some of them come from here, from different communities that have different needs, and it's not fair to assume that we all have the same access. In some communities, we don't have contact to other people who may have more access. And I would say third, and this might be a repetition, but I really want to emphasize, WIOA in the Hill in Congress is described as a demand-driven policy meant to meet the demands of a capitalist society. I have no problem with that sort of informal definition. Capitalism is fine, it's led this country great. But there are consequences that someone has to address. And we're forcing agencies and governments and boards all around the country to respond in patchwork. So if we were to have a more holistic approach to equity and to look at people throughout the course of their lives, they don't just learn to then earn and retire. They constantly have to earn and learn depending on their industry, but they also might have accidents. I've got surgery next Monday. That's a different conversation that I'm not looking forward to. But I have a need right now. I might be unemployed tomorrow. I might get sick. My wife might get sick. And there are more needs that are more subtle, and we can't blanket the population. So having that respect, stepping back from the political divide, putting on our caps as social scientists and looking at this as a system, which is the top second word in this policy area at least, I think we could come to this with a refreshed look and realize two things. We can do more with what we have already. It's not always about money. And we'd be able to go to our Congress members and say, hey, this program didn't work so well. I can acknowledge that. This program needs funding. And I have evidence now. And if you can do this, we can do great strides for the community.
So you brought up two interesting points on demand and time, right? Because I see the system as not really facilitating an on-demand time, right? I mean, the system is cumbersome and the system doesn't always pivot very fast. So how do we respond more quickly to these changing environments in the business and industry today?
One, I think we need to actually develop a system. I think we call ourselves a system, but we're not really a system. We're like more of a federation. We all hang out together. We go to meetings together. We don't speak ill.
You make
most
me
of
think
the
of
time
Star
each other.
Wars when you say federation,
yeah.
right? I'm like, really? That's kind of cool.
And I think we've got to build a system. I mean, when you want to go to one website and talk to one person and get all these services, because if you expect Nova to provide all these wraparound services, I've got to triple your tuition. So I've got to have a good relationship, and we've got to have that workforce board working with community colleges, working with the K-12, working with everyone in the community and support services, because we cannot do this on our own. And if going to the different funding sources and saying, I need money for my students, they're going to point over there and say, well, the workforce board giving money for this, or you have a foundation in your community that's paying for those services, but we're not blended. We really have a fragmented system still. And I think to get to that efficiency, we've got to have some real frank conversations about how we build that system.
Sergio, what would you recommend?
I add to that when you talk about the system, I think about how much more we could do with the existing system. Back to what can we do with the resources we have? American Job Centers, community colleges come up to mind. Community colleges have been recognized across, this system for a long time. Doesn't always translate in legislation in DC. So codified grants for community colleges, they're nimble, they're innovative. I know there's this comments about credit versus non-credited, but maybe we could have a conversation about the government being more responsive to the needs. Hey, in Northern Virginia, we need this program. You're going to take 6 months to do it, my guy. We need this right now, to give our workers credit, whether they're young, 18 years old, or in their 30s or 40s, older workers. And with our existing infrastructure, we've got around, 1,200 AJCs around the country, 1,100 to 1,300 community colleges. That's physical infrastructure we don't have to recreate. That's something that Congress does not focus on when they think about how much money are we spending, who are we missing. Let's look at what we have and how we could somehow amplify that. I mean, workforce boards, they came from private industry councils, and before that they came from something else. We don't always have to recreate or cut. We can look at what we have and expand that.
Angelo.
So I think one important facet of all this is meeting people where they're at. And I think with the pandemic, this really should help us reimagine the way we look at the delivery of services, the nature of how it's done. Even the AJCC model. I think if we're looking at the system from its totality, and you're taking into account the community colleges, the school districts, the totality of it, you can actually utilize the assets and infrastructure of that broader system to deliver those services. For example, having America Job Centers physically at community colleges or at school districts in different ways and I think also that has another important intangible value, because from a trust factor, whether it's churches, schools, and doctors are some of the most trusted people from different marginalized communities in terms of interacting with them. And so I think having these resources and piggybacking off of the real estate involved with that as well, I think can really help drive a deeper level of engagement. And then I think on the employer side, one, we have the attention of the industry and business community in general, because people are struggling to have this historical workforce shortage. But at the same time, this is a critical time for us to provide that meaningful value proposition and really deliver, and for people to be able to see the data and see the responsiveness from the system, so that long-term sustainably, even after this economic cycle matures and transitions, that people feel like that they got that value and opportunity.
So John, how can we respond better to industry?
Well, I'll just kind of take back on that one as well. I know that's a topic that has multiple different facets, right? When you think about diversity and inclusion and so forth, I think that from our perspective, coming out of the pandemic, your leading question is, what did we learn? Of course, we identified our weaknesses with skills gap, but one of the biggest things that we learned, I think personally, is to respect work and to restore dignity of work, because during the pandemic, our society kept moving, and it kept moving because of makers and fixers, right? When you think about all the things that have happened, these trades that were once considered a consolation prize are actually value positions that built this. If you drive
can't be done virtually.
You can't be done virtually. If you drive around the city, you can see the craftsmanship of buildings that are 200 years old, right? That are just a gorgeous building that somebody took the pride and dignity to build, and generations were honored to know that their family built that building, to drive around. I think we've lost that creativity and that focus. You mentioned it earlier about these trades. It's one thing to say that. It's another thing to say that you're proud of your son or daughter who's going to a technical school to become a welder, to become a pipe fitter, to become a position that will lead to prosperity, because these are great career paths. And I think that's the key, I would say, around that, is we have to restore the dignity and pride around those. And if we do that, there's communities that never knew these jobs existed. And when we can restore the pride, we'll help address that diversity and inclusion.
Yeah, and I'll just share a personal story with that. So my son just graduated last year, decided not to go away to a four-year school and wanted to go to community college. Yep. And I can't tell you the people that would go, oh, yep, that's really smart, right? But it was a total backhanded compliment, because that's not what they were thinking, because as parents, we are so almost rabid about how that affects us. Like, where our child goes to school reflects on how good of a parent I am, right? And my ability to, present my child for success or prep him for success. And it was an interesting and kind of sad experience, I'm not gonna lie. Yeah. So to your point about the dignity of work, the value of these skills and trades that have to be done in person, can't be done virtually, I think as a society, we're just not really ready to embrace that. But what is the alternative gonna be, right? more debt for students that take on, four-year schools where maybe they don't even know what they're going to do with that four-year degree, right? HR departments that write, bachelor's degree necessary and can't even tell you why. So I think there's a lot of change and a lot of room for improvement in those different areas. Well, again, for the sake of time, I just want to conclude with asking all of you, on stage, you've got a room full of workforce professionals. Again, those that are in leadership positions, those are working with, on our front lines, working with job seekers. What is your advice to them, or even what should they concentrate on over these next 3 days?
I'll just kind of leave it as collaboration and communication. We have a vast network of technical colleges, we have labor boards, we have workforce boards, we have everything that we can do together if we work together. We just can't all go our separate paths. So I would say communication and collaboration.
Just piggybacking off of that, I just think, again, like statutorily, we're all supposed to be conveners and we're supposed to have that level of engagement, but without having those personal relationships and dynamics, and for some people that are just getting involved in the workforce system in the last couple of years, they've really not had any opportunity in a meaningful way to have these things. And so I think just to see such a great turnout and to see people connecting in that deeper way, I think that's really going to be the big thing. But the one other last thing I'll just say too is, I think when we talk about equity and diversity, it's very important, especially like when you think about like many of the jobs that young people are studying for right now do not even exist, that there has to be not just an availability that, hey, here are some coding or STEM related opportunities, but for the intentionality to be that there's a foundational skill sets that all of the students are able to get exposed to. Like in our school district, I'm on the Riverside School Board, even at kindergarten, starting at kindergarten, every student is getting exposed to coding, critical thinking, logical based. And so that way it's not an issue of trying to address an equity gap. It's a matter of that everybody is having those opportunities.
I'd say two things. One, to address the political nature of what I mentioned is, I know Washington can feel really slow and nothing gets done, and that's by design. Our debates, as divisive as they can be, are the filter through which we get work done. But I think it is hopeful to have the biggest workforce legislation bill to be reauthorized this year, so I think it should lift the tone. And I think too, I admit that DC, working at a think tank on policy, we can be very removed from the day-to-day activities of workforce boards. And I just want to share that the workforce boards that stand out, that make their way into our reports, that we hear about, they stand out because they convene leaders and they bring together employees in schools. They also help identify new resources, funding mechanisms, brokering agreements between the workforce system. And I'd say third, at the front line, you can assess day-to-day the changes and needs of the economy. If we could somehow find a way of amplifying that, because it gets lost when it goes from state to national level, it would help to have more educated conversations on DC, when policymakers often make decisions on the fly, and we should be able to help them slow down and say, hey, this is working in this local workforce board. It's worked across 3 others across different states. You might want to see if this can be at a national level, and that's where ideas are created and fermented if we can communicate between each other more.
I'd reiterate the collaboration piece that you mentioned earlier. I think especially with businesses, because businesses we know are busier than ever, and we all like to own those relationships. The workforce board wants to have the relationship, the college, the university, the local nonprofit. I think we have to come together more to engage businesses so that, one, they understand there is the bones of a system there, but two, working together, I think they're willing to dedicate more time if they see what is possible across the organizations, and I think that helps with elected officials when you're trying to make a case about getting more resources or new laws passed.
Well, I just want to thank you all. This was an excellent way to kick off our general session, and I know all of you appreciated what you had to say, and I know hopefully maybe you can stick around and answer some questions after the session. So thank you guys so much.
And now, please welcome to the stage the President and CEO of NAWB, Ron Pater.
Holy cow, you're here. Man, I want to echo Jen's comments, and say a sincere thank you, first of all, and secondly, I think it's a testament to how well you understand the circumstances we are in with regard to, American business and American workers. And so I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart and congratulate you. It's been a long couple of years, and it's been a long couple of years for us, but we continue to, I hope, represent you well to advance the interests of workforce development and skill development in the U.S. and the territories. Each year we think about how do we honor the work that's being done across the country by workforce boards, and there are partnerships that are important. We know that workforce boards and community colleges have a long history of working together, and I think if there's a moment in time where that partnership has got to be stronger, it's got to be built better, it's got to be resilient, it's got to help lead the skills conversation in our communities, I think that's done. And I think now is the time. We want to honor today a partnership that we've had the pleasure of working with. It's not a partnership that started yesterday. It's not a partnership that started last week. It's a partnership that has been built together, forged together, that works together, that recognizes that jointly they have a deep responsibility to the businesses and to the workers in their community. It gives me a great deal of pleasure to present an excellence in partner and collaboration to Bill Pink, President of the Grand Rapids Community College, and Jacob Moss, CEO, West Michigan Works. See why we asked you to sit down front?
You got me.
You are most welcome and certainly most deserving.
Thank you.
All right.
Appreciate you, brother.
Thanks, Bill.
Hey,
All right, you guys want to go that way?
Yep.
All right. Now, one of the things that we're very happy about is our continuing relationship and conversation with Walmart. We have begun to launch a project with Walmart where we are going to be reaching out. We reached out a couple of days, or yesterday, I guess, to a number of workforce board leaders here as they began the forum. We are reaching out. We're going to reach out through a series of design labs to explore, develop, and implement a series of technology, policy, and people priorities that will help shape the future of our national public workforce development system in response to the lessons learned from the recent COVID-19 pandemic. Our goal is to work with you to brainstorm solutions to the current challenges in the ecosystem around technology and data focus with you and with our partners. We're very proud, as I said, of our work with Walmart, and so it's a real pleasure for us to have with us today Amy Goldfinger, who is the Senior Vice President for Global Talent and Workforce Strategy for Walmart. As such, Amy leads the effort to ensure Walmart has the talent in place to meet its business imperatives. Previously, she co-led the Global Human Resources Advisory practice at Heidrick & Struggles, where she focused on senior-level searches across industry and advised clients in the areas of HR transformation, talent management, strategy, execution, and onboarding. Prior to joining the firm, Amy was a product director at Dun & Bradstreet, managing a portfolio of risk management and product services. And prior to that, she spent 6 years at Booz Allen Hamilton, specializing in the design and implementation of leadership development programs, competency-based human capital systems, including the selection, recruitment, and post-merger integrations of both public and private organizations.
She holds a BA in psychology with a minor in business from the University of Rochester, an MBA from Columbia Business School. She is a certified professional human resources management. She is a wife to her husband, Thor, and she is a stepmom to 3 wonderful kids. Please join me in welcoming Amy Goldfinger, Senior VP for Global Talent, Walmart. And really, I am trainable. Like they walked me through there and said, "Here's where she's coming," and so I looked the other way. Amy, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I appreciate you taking the time. Senior VP for Global Talent, Workforce Strategy, Organizational Design. That's a big title. Like, talk about your job. What are the kind of things you get involved in?
First and foremost, I have a lot of fun. No, I'm really thrilled to be here, and this is such a timely and important discussion, Ron. And yeah, so our objective as an organization, there are about 600 people in the talent organization, and we really focus on how do we accelerate Walmart's success by ensuring that we have right people, right skills, right roles, right time, right location. And we serve an organization of 2.3 million associates around the world.
I was just going to ask, like, there's a couple more than 600 people work for Walmart,
country.
right? 2.3 million?
2.3 million, and you'd be amazed. You think of us as a retailer, but in fact, we have a healthcare business, a financial services business, our supply chain, our operations, our merchandising, the complexity of Walmart, including not just because of its scale, but also its business is really fascinating. So our organization is focused on ensuring we have the talent pipelines, the talent in place with the right capabilities. We establish our workforce strategies. We look at our organizational design. And we're really fostering our talent pipelines. And I'm really excited to be here in particular because you're all in the communities where Walmart is. We're within 10 miles of 90% of Americans. So I'm sure you all know Walmart. And so we're in your communities.
That is probably less than the morning run that Mark Matkey, who is the director in Spokane. That's probably less than Matkey's morning run, 10 miles. He could be there every day.
Yes, exactly. Maybe even run between. We've got stores, we've got clubs, we've got distribution centers. You know, you could make a whole workout out of it. So particularly excited to be here to connect on that.
So the theme that we chose is that the forum is about transforming the potential into workforce power. When I say that, what comes to your mind?
Yeah. Joining Walmart for me, and I'm just coming up on my 4-year anniversary, was all about unlocking potential. You know, when I really could fathom the sort of scale of our workforce. We're the largest private employer. We have just tremendous potential in the organization and as an organization. We've been intentionally and methodically investing in the growth of our associates and our jobs. So just to give you a sense, somewhere between 20 and 25% of Americans have worked for Walmart.
Wow.
So there's a responsibility there to unlock potential, and I love this word potential. It has such sort of forward-leaning energy to it. And so we provide training, development to really help people reach their goals. It's not only great for our business, but it's also the right thing to do. And we're really focused on how do we support our associates holistically. So since 2015, we've invested in building one of the largest employer training capabilities. We've created in-house academies where we can drive innovation through our training mechanisms. We've also created Live Better University, which is a means by which our associates can cost-free, entirely tuition-free, cost-free, gain a degree and education through our programming. And then also through the Walmart Foundation, we've invested more than $100 million in ways in which we can sort of unlock this potential and create multiple pathways. It's all about creating more equitable, right, fair means by which people can advance their careers, and of course NAWB is a big part of that. So we're investing in a system where sort of all learning counts. We think about the whole person, and we'll talk more about that. And that skills and experiences are really transferable across someone's career. The way that I like to think about it is our associates own their experience and their skills. So how can we help them sort of achieve and maximize and sort of optimize that portfolio of experiences and ensure that we're also meeting them where they are in terms of what are their aspirations, their goals, their abilities, their traits, all the ways in which we can support them.
We're going to talk in a minute about the different generations, because there are people,
oh my gosh.
I've met people, as you all have been very good to me in taking me behind the scenes of Walmart and talking about different things. Like, I've met people that have a lot of years, a lot of experience with Walmart. So I kind of think I know the answer to this, but why is skilling and reskilling so important to Walmart? I mean, it's driving a lot of investment that you're making.
It is, but qualifications achieved in schools largely overlook skills gained in other domains. Through personal growth, through aspirations. Think about military service, volunteerism. You know, there are so many ways in which people earn their skills. And then we have this external landscape that we're all living through today, where there's a pretty significant imbalance between our demand and supply for talent. And so particularly because we have such a high number of opportunities, we have to look at our non-traditional paths. We're really, really committed to that. Many of the roles in our organization do not require a college degree, never have. Our store managers, who are pillars of their communities, they earn on average $210,000 a year. And play, as I mentioned, a very important role in their communities. They do not require a degree. So we really value the skills, the knowledge, the experiences to help people then find employment and advance. And so we're investing in a number of ways. One way is through our just simplified hiring practices. As I mentioned, we don't ask people for many of our roles whether or not they have a degree. We've also created a new working model in our stores, which relates back to our skills, which is really interesting, around cross-training. So giving people exposure to other roles and responsibilities within the store system is another way to drive new experiences and build skills. I mentioned our Walmart Academies. We're effectively paying people. We've been paying people since about 2015 to learn. And of course, a lot of innovation comes from that, and we get the benefits of that growth and development. And then I mentioned Live Better You, but we're really, it's how do we focus on the whole person, have a ladder of opportunity. 75% of our managers in our stores and our clubs started as hourly employees. So I say this because you don't need to be as large as Walmart, right, to consider the fact that someone coming in an hourly position can really have so much
when you're focused on the skills and the competencies.
Absolutely.
One of the things I have to say, again, because we've spent a lot of time with folks at Walmart, one of the things I really found interesting and really pretty cool is that as we got to hang out at the academy as they were going through it, was your focus to all of the people who were going through the academy, helping them understand, like, here's why displays are set up the way they are, and this, and not being afraid to talk about profit margins and profitability for the company, for them across different benefits. And I really have to say that was so cool, because I think, and I'm a poli-sci grad, so I get to say my bias is we don't teach economics enough in high school. We don't teach kids what the system is we currently have, like it or not. This is the system we're in. So I really always appreciated that about what you all are doing.
And just to that point, Ron, I mean, very ingrained in our culture and our values are that our best ideas come from our associates. They're literally on the front lines. And so to your point, that exposure to the whole picture helps drive innovation, right? Because putting the pieces together, appreciating how the different aspects of their daily role contribute to the business, it's very gratifying. And I think it fosters the level of contribution and meaning and purpose in a day to have that whole picture. So I'm glad you saw that, and I think it's really valuable.
It was really pretty cool because it wasn't all just like people who just graduated from high school. There were some folks that maybe had a wee bit of gray, like I do. Earlier today, I got an opportunity, and I'm going to put in a plug. We're going to hear from David Altiger tomorrow, who is the Senior VP for Research for the Federal Reserve. And one of the things that David talked about was how the different generations hear the offer, like an employment offer, differently.
Yes.
You've talked about training, retraining, everything to do that. You, like, across how many generations now, and what does that look like?
Yeah. We probably have 4 or 5 generations represented in Walmart. So there's not a one size fits all. And we're trying to meet people where they are, right? I mean, you have individuals who are really focused on well-being resources, and you have individuals who are looking to be brought up to speed on technology and everything in between. So our objective is really to provide a broad range of access to resources to support our entire workforce. But I think it comes back to what I referenced just a moment ago about purpose and meaning. And so if you sort of, irrespective, so agnostic of generation, people want to feel that their roles are fulfilling, that the work that they're doing is satisfying and gratifying. And so there's this aspect of that being the red thread through the work. And if we can help people find meaning and purpose in the work that they're doing, then I think that's pretty universal. And it strips out some of the sort of intergenerational differences. That doesn't mean we're ignoring those, right? We appreciate that people
Because it would be different techniques in how you're reaching the different generations?
Exactly. But there's, again, some universal pieces. I mean, just through the pandemic, for example, we were very clear on physical, emotional, and financial well-being, right? Pretty universal. And giving a wide range of resources, of course, we're well positioned to do that in terms of, what are you experiencing in the course of this pandemic, and how can we support you across the range of ways in which you might need support, for example. And then, of course, as I mentioned, there's different ways that we are training for different degrees of readiness, I would say.
For those of us who go to the office, I guess, whatever that meant during the pandemic.
Yes.
For me, I would still wear dress pants, a dress shirt, as I was on Zoom every day.
Were you wearing sweatpants?
No, I will not admit to that. I always wore dress pants and dressed up, so when people saw me on Zoom, I really was. No.
I was able to grow another human during the pandemic without telling anyone, so we all have our ways.
We all had our hobbies through the
exactly.
Anyway.
I mean, she just kicked, so she's excited. Sorry.
Oh gosh, my question. No, did you see the attitude of workers change? Was there a different sort of how they approached it and think about work?
Yeah. We have so much lifeblood sort of running through Walmart, and obviously our front line is a big consideration. So I go back to, first and foremost, by the way, when we talk about ways of working, to put a more serious note on it, is the health and safety and well-being of our team, and that's sort of the baseline. But we also think about ways of working in terms of what people's aspirations are. And one of the we had this sort of idea incubating for some period of time, and the pandemic helped to accelerate it. And this was, how do we give people, the person sitting in Iowa who is really curious to explore other opportunities, wants to be discovered, wants to discover opportunity, hidden talent, tons of potential. how do they get access to other opportunities? And one way is a path toward, for example, our home office, where you'd be wearing a shirt and not
I would
necessarily
be
a
a shirt and
jacket.
dress pants, yes. Absolutely, I would.
And so it accelerated something that we had been talking about, which is a pathway from our field into our home office. And we just actually launched the pilot a couple weeks ago. We have 25 people coming through, small cohort, but nonetheless, we're sort of testing and learning. And through successful completion of an 8-week experience, which is a full-time dedicated role in the home office, doesn't require relocation, allows people to stay where they are, doesn't require a ton of travel. So if you think about working parents or working mothers who can't necessarily travel a lot, we've designed it so that it fits the life and the opportunity as well, for a pathway to our office. So, we're looking at the ways in which we can pull people through sort of and internally move our talent to make sure that there are those opportunities. And that's a way of working.
So if I recall correctly, even prior to the pandemic, you had done a lot of work around, I don't know what I would call it, I guess the certainty of my schedule. There was a lot of work around trying to understand employees, trying to give that certainty. I got kids.
Yes.
I imagine that was very valuable and put to the test through the pandemic as the little nippers were not going off to school, they were going off to the living room.
Yes. And that's where, when we talk about ways of working, actually technology plays a really important role, right? Because we put in the hands of our associates the freedom to set their schedule within a framework. And that's been, a huge way of attracting, retaining our talent in terms of another aspect of sort of ways of working. I mean, flexibility looks different for different people. I mean, in a little bit of a different scenario, in 2020, I was trying to bring someone onto my team. And I was thinking, we're sort of a couple months into the pandemic, everyone is working at home, and she wanted that version of flexibility. Young kids, so on and so forth. We went to offer. She turned it down. The only reason she turned it down is because she wanted the assurance that when we came, back into an office, that everyone would be required to be in the office. She actually wanted to be in the office. So it just gives you a sense of sort of the range of needs that people had, from scheduling to schoolwork they might be doing, to taking care of children, to I want to be in an office, I don't want to be in an office. So how do you value the flexibility while still creating the teamwork and the moments? I mean, we really think innovation and speed comes from being together also. So we have sort of moments that matter, but giving people also the freedom.
I want to ask you about people like me who walk in the door of the store or who go online. Consumer behavior changed during the pandemic. Some of that, I don't know how you all are thinking about, like, what is some of that what's gonna stay, what's gonna change? How did that consumer behavior change what you were doing or what you were thinking about?
Yeah. In some ways it was dramatic, in other ways it was more of the same, meaning consumer behavior has been evolving quite rapidly, right? We were already on a pretty clear path in terms of the e-commerce and how we meet our customers where they are. The aspect of the pandemic that really drove that, obviously, was just how do we move that faster and get there sooner. So there are a couple of innovations that came out of it. We have our scan and go technology in Sam's Club, right? So you can come in and touchless sort of experience. We have Walmart Plus, which launched, that allows for same-day delivery, the possibility of same-day delivery. We have our marketplace, which is our third-party system. So all of these different ways in which we appreciated that customer habits, their constraints, right? So how do you have touchless sort of pickup and delivery and all of those pieces. And then the other piece that really came to light is we're one of the largest pharmacies and we're a large healthcare provider in the country.
Okay.
So another part of our business, and again, 90% of the US living close to a store, to have that one-stop shop experience, if you're going to venture in a situation where for some people that was, the one venture,
trip.
Right, of the week or what have you. You could also go get your vaccine. You can get some affordable health care. We have 150 million customers a week. So how do you create a one-stop experience that's not, again, we're not just a retailer. There's these aspects of the services that we provide. So we're trying to change with our customers, continue to change with our customers. And so far they've been responding really well. And again, the opportunity to walk in and get your optical and your prescription drugs and maybe, your vaccination and, the fruit that you need for the next day is sort of how we think about the whole person again.
I'm old enough that the shopping experience, like the whole, the need for same day, I got to have it today.
Yeah.
Other than diapers, like when you run out of diapers, today is the day that you need those. I don't know about the same day. I don't understand all that. But let me ask you, so once we take that product off the shelf, we're all experiencing, I think, wait a minute, there's no whatever. It used to be on this shelf, there's nothing there. And then we go home and somebody tells us something about the supply chain.
Yes.
That has to impact you. What kind of things are you doing? What are you thinking about with regard to how do we make, I guess, more resilient, right? The supply chain more resilient.
Absolutely. So we are one of the largest supply chains in the country. We appreciate the constraints that we've all been experiencing. We've been investing heavily in our talent. So, I think it starts with people. And so do we have the right people? And if you think about our truck driver fleet, for example, one of the larger fleets, we were really needing to make sure that we had not only the right number of truck drivers, but all the skills. There's a lot of technical aspects to the role. And so we recently launched, we've done two things to support the supply chain. One is we've initiated a driver development program, and it's a 12-week program, and it's interesting, we structured the program and then we thought, who's going to teach this program?
Yeah.
So we looked to our current private fleet of drivers, and they've been engaged in teaching, and it's just a phenomenal way for skills to be developed both on the sort of recipients end and the students in the program, as well as the drivers who are now, sort of bestowing their knowledge. So that's been awesome. And then we recently announced, last week actually, an investment in the wages for drivers as well.
I heard this.
Yes.
We're going to pay them a couple of bucks.
Yes. So the wage for drivers has gone up, and but it's in concert, right, with the other aspects. We look to bring people in and we look to keep them, and it's the development, the training, the opportunity to get training, and it's people in our communities who are looking for, what could I possibly do with the skills that I have, or where are the opportunities to grow my skills? Those are phenomenal jobs, and all over the country. And so we've really leaned into that talent side of that opportunity.
That's tough work.
Yeah.
Driving truck. That's tough work. That's a tough job. From the other side of the desk, your side of the desk, this has all gotten, I don't want to say way more complicated, but being the director of workforce strategy, is it more complicated today than it was what you've been in the business 5 years? I mean, out of college, 5 years, 6 years?
Very nice round. Thank you.
It's more complicated
Every
today.
time I go to the doctor, they talk about how old I am, so that's very nice. Thank you. Anyway, sorry.
Just remember, they're only practicing. Lawyers and doctors practice.
Practicing.
We have to actually do things.
That's
but
right. So.
I mean, it is more complicated.
It is more complicated. I think our goal is to sort of put the humanity at the center of it. There are workforce strategies, so at the center of it. But this idea of how do you match people and their skills and their aspirations with the needs of the business. And between those two sort of aspects of the sort of demand and supply, we are really leaning in. So you've got a source of talent, millions of people who have tremendous skills and capabilities, and people coming in, of course, who are new to the organization. And we've got an evolving organization, location, skills, the technology, all those factors that are at play. we can marry those two, and the way to do that is to invest in their growth.
So it's paying more attention to the talent we already have.
Yeah, and invest in their development. So rather than saying, another way that we think about it is don't screen people out, screen people in. Right? Bring them into the organization and say, wow, look at, you've got about, I'm just throwing out a number, 70% of what we're looking for. Great. We also have this coursework and these opportunities to sort of fill that gap, so to speak. We're going to help you bridge, and so it gives, and these are the 3 opportunities that will present for you. So we're actually really leaning into that. And I think it was yesterday at a design lab here, in fact, you were talking, and one of the takeaways.
Design lab, yeah.
I love this takeaway. We totally subscribe to this, which is data as, currency, as a shared currency. So powerful, and I think of that data as our whole associate data, right? All of the different experiences, what they want to do, what they're excited about, their relative traits and their abilities. That, to me, that data is so rich. And it's our responsibility to know our talent and to give them the chance to sort of discover. So I think it's both complex, but the complexity, I think, breeds innovation and opportunity as well for the workforce.
Let me just say, Amy, if anybody ever told me I had 70% of anything that they were ever looking at, I would be that would make my day. Let me tell you that. Let me give you the last word. Closing thoughts. Where do we go from here? What kind of thoughts do you have?
I think there's just a collective opportunity. When I say we, maybe I'm not only talking about Walmart, I'm talking about all of us, to help people, to come to terms with what our credentials are, what their credentials are, what the experiences mean, and help people navigate toward opportunity, sort of collectively. And it comes back to what do we agree about skills and people's experiences so we can really optimize it. And that's the benefit of all of us. It's sort of a mutual opportunity. So you talk about potential of the workforce. I wake up every day really excited about what the possibilities are, and I think collectively we have a really, really fantastic opportunity ahead of us.
Well, I want to thank you. I've appreciated the partnership with Walmart Foundation. You all have helped us collectively and your industry understand skills and competencies and the value. So I want to say thanks, and please join me in thanking Amy Goldfinger, Senior VP for Workforce, Walmart.
Thank you, Ron. It's great. Appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. Thanks. Or as they
This concludes today's session. Thank you for joining us. Please make your way to your subsequent meetings at this time. We'll see you here tomorrow at noon.
La primera en superar la magia de mi soledad. Ya veo que era cuestión de tiempo. Todo llega en el momento que debe llegar. Llega cuando debe llegar. ¿Qué fue lo que